We all know somebody that said, I read a real estate book and I'm going to become a real estate investor. And then they bought one of these, a house, and then they lost one of these. $100,000. It happens every single day. The reality is, beyond just reading books, you want to have a mentor or someone you can subscribe to that can help you avoid the pitfalls of trial and error. And today I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 huge real estate mistakes and how to avoid every one of them so that instead of losing $100,000 on a deal, you can start making $100,000 on a deal. One shot, now the future is yours. Go! Let's start with this. Making mistakes is a part of life and it's a part of the game. But most people, when they make a mistake, they won't get back up again. They literally just give up. And unfortunately, there's a lot of real estate investors that are just 3 feet from gold, right? They got their pickaxe, they're mining, they're so close to that vein of gold, but then they got a boo-boo, they got an owie, and they got scared, and they basically ran for the hills and said, oh, real estate investing, that's not for me. Or, I'm sure a lot of people fail at that game. And here's the truth. 90% of all millionaires made their first million in the game of real estate. So pay attention. Today, I'm going to share with you the 5 biggest mistakes that new investors make. And if you avoid all 5 of these, your likelihood of success is going to go through the roof. The first mistake is a lack of research, a lack of crunching the numbers. If you've been following me for a while, or people that are in the game of real estate or even buying and selling businesses, they always talk about the numbers. And the truth is, you win or lose based on the way you evaluate numbers. Now, I want to talk about the most important number first, and it's called ROI, or return on investment. And it's where you're doing an analysis of, if I put money into the deal, how much money am I getting back? And is it too little? Is it a negative number? Or is it a lot of money? When I buy real estate, here's my ground rule. If I can't see how I'm going to make 25% a year or more on my money, I won't buy the deal. Now that's called a standard. So number 1, you want to know how to crunch the numbers. But there's some other numbers that you want to look at. Number 2, is the house going to have a positive cash flow? It's like, well, I did some research, and because of how and where I'm buying the house, this house is going to rent for $1,500 a month, and my mortgage should be $1,200 a month. So I'm going to make $300 a month. And the question is that enough cash flow? And you might ask, well, my standards say that I should be making 3 to 6% cash on cash. Hey, that works. That's a yes for me. Another thing is just understanding, are you buying in a market that is appreciating? Is it going up in value, or is it declining, going down? Because the truth is, they say the number 1 secret to real estate is location, location, location. And some locations are trending down and some locations are trending up. The biggest reason why people make this mistake is they either just don't know how to run the numbers, or they're just so dang excited to become a real estate investor. This is where, for newbies, it's important to have a mentor. You should have someone watching your 6, someone that can help you crunch the numbers, because it's just too much for me to teach you in a video how to do all that. But if you have a buddy, or someone that is a successful investor, and say, hey, will you help evaluate this deal and look at these numbers that Kris was talking about? They'll crunch those numbers for you, and it doesn't take more than a few minutes, and then they can say, wow, this looks really good, or it looks kind of average, or it looks kind of bad. The second mistake that real estate investors make is they get over leveraged with debt. What is over leveraging? Well, there's a couple of ways of looking at it. The first one is buying too much house. For example, my rule of thumb when I buy real estate is that I buy homes generally 30% below the national median in the top markets. Well, the national median is sitting around $430,000, and my average purchase price is around $250,000. Now, the reason why that's a rule is because I know that the number of people that want a $250,000 home is this big compared to the people that want a $350,000 home or a $500,000 home. And so if you're buying too much house for the market, that is one way of over leveraging. Here's the second way of over leveraging: maxing out your debt to income ratio. Like, banks will work with you and say, well, we'll allow up to 50% of your revolving debt to be associated with your mortgage. And another bank might say 40%. And at the end of the day, if you don't budget carefully and your mortgage payment is just simply too big, then it doesn't matter if the bank says, yeah, we'll qualify and give you the house if you're going to struggle to make your payment. Here's a third way of over leveraging. You bought a house that you liked, that you were excited about, that you thought would rent for $2,000 a month, and then it turns out it only rents for $1,700 a month, but your mortgage is $1,800 a month. You didn't factor in enough positive cash flow, so now you're over leveraged. You've got too much house and you don't have enough cash flow. Overall, this conversation of over leveraging yourself with debt is about maxing out your financial ability when it would be better to be conservative or buy in a less expensive market, or making sure you're not biting off more than you can chew. In 2023, 43% of real estate foreclosures were due to over leveraging. In other words, people bought too much. Don't do that. Hey, I wouldn't pause this video if it wasn't important. But this could literally make one of the most real differences for you or someone that you care about. Most investors work way too hard and for way too little. And if you're earning 8% on your money in the market, like 401ks and IRAs, or you're losing money to inflation, you're playing the wrong game. It'll never get you where you want to go. For the last decade, on my last 2,000 plus deals, my team and I are averaging 60% annual ROI on our real estate. And here's the best part. We do 100% of the work. You bring the capital, it's usually from like a 401k, an IRA, or equity in a home, and then we do everything else, and then we split the profits equally. This isn't a seminar, it's not a course. These are real deals, real returns, and if you want in to learn about what partnering with me could look like, click the link below and find out. The third mistake investors make is not having an exit strategy. Every successful investor knows the end game before they start. For example, when I buy a single family property and I buy it in a market where I know I'm going to get a 30 or 40% annual ROI, I already know I'm gonna hold this home for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. I'm waiting until I've doubled or tripled my money, and then I'm gonna sell it. And I'm gonna take my winnings and I'm gonna turn that one home into 2 or 3 homes, because what I'm doing with time is I'm multiplying. That's a strategy. 48% of investors lose money because they're forced to sell during downturns, and market downturns force investors to sell at a loss if they don't plan ahead, which is why I have another rule of always buying so far below the median, because when a market does downturn or go soft, it really hits the $1 million homes, but not the $250,000 homes. The fourth mistake is about underestimating the costs of everything. This might be like, I bought this house, it was a bit of a fixer-upper, and I thought $10,000 would be enough to fix it up and then sell it. And then it turns out when you get into the house and you start tearing things out that there was termites over here and there was a belly in the sewer line there, and maybe you actually did need to replace the roof. Now it turned into $25,000 of repairs. You never want to be optimistic when it comes to numbers and the game of real estate. You want to be a realist, and if you have to, even a skeptic or a pessimist, because the reality is you don't want to overbid a project, you want to underbid a project. Hidden costs ultimately add up to the purchase price. When I bought my very first entry-level home, I knew that I had to redo the paint, I knew I had to do the carpet, but here's what I didn't know. I didn't know that when I flushed the toilet upstairs or downstairs, that it didn't always make it out to the sewer line, because there was a belly in the line from a branch, from a root underground that pushed the pipe up, and it meant that the poop wouldn't make it over the hump and then go back into the house and overflow, and it cost me $7,000 to fix. Now, fortunately, that did not give me a sour taste and cause me to not invest in real estate. I still made over $60,000 on that house over the years that I held it, but it was frustrating. If I had a more successful investor come in, they would have had a higher likelihood of catching that problem than I did as a brand new investor that didn't know what I was doing. Here's another cost that we underestimate all the time: vacancies. I bought the house and I'm like, yeah, it'll rent out right away. But what if it were to take 2 or 3 months? In the market we're in today, it takes like 4 or 5 weeks to get a house rented out. But in 1 in 10 homes, one of them's gonna take 2 or 3 months. And then all of a sudden, you're caught paying that extra mortgage for 2 or 3 months. You should have reserves on that. And if you don't prepare for that, or don't know to prepare for that because you're new, then you might find yourself underestimating the costs and getting yourself into hot water. I've got 2,000 real estate partners around the world that watch my social media, click the links below, wound their way through their system and said, hey, I got a 401k, I've got an IRA, I've got equity in my home. Kris, will you partner with me? And when we buy real estate together, I always set up what's called a SWAN account, a sleep well at night account, so that when we buy a rental, we actually overfund the bank account in the beginning just to give them peace of mind and to know there's more than enough money to basically manage this property. By doing that, I'm not just protecting the investment, I'm protecting their mindset. I did save the best for last. The fifth major mistake that new investors make is they do what's called emotional investing. They cannot tell the difference between falling in love with the numbers on a balance sheet and then actually falling in love with the granite in the house. They get excited, they look at a house and they start imagining, what if we lived here? What would we do to it? How would we want to fix it up? And what that emotional investing does is it means that instead of meeting your standards, you become desperate. You may bid too much for the house because you just want it at the end of the day, and now you've lowered your return on investment and it's going to hurt you. Or you end up over renovating. So you had a budget on the flooring that you wanted to put in, and in that neighborhood, everyone's got linoleum floors, and you're like, we're gonna put in solid wood floors. Well, you're not gonna get a return on an investment, but it is gonna cost you more money out of pocket to do. And so when you become emotional, this is when we start making the worst mistakes, instead of making our decisions based on ones and zeros. 72% of first-time investors buy based on emotions instead of due diligence. Fall in love with the ROI on the deal. take those dream home lenses off your eyes and fall in love with the ROI and not the property itself. Let's wrap it up. Leverage data, not feelings. Mistakes are a part of the process, but learning from them is super important. And lastly, get a mentor. Find someone that, in my case, has done 6,000 deals over $2 billion worth, so I know how to look at the deal and determine whether it's a good idea or a bad idea or a meh idea. You do not want to be a mid-investor. You want to be a successful investor. And if you're looking for a shortcut, you can click the link below and learn about partnering with me. I'll do 100% of the work. I'll make sure you do not make any of those pesky mistakes. And by the time we end up splitting the profits, I believe that you're going to make way more money than if you do it on your own anyway. Click the link below, learn about partnering. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't really have money for investing, Kris, I'm just watching the videos to learn, think again. Do you know someone that has money in a 401k or an IRA? Do you already own a home and it has equity in it? Or have you been saving money for something else? Or do you have a family member that might want to partner with you? You might be closer to buying that first rental than you know, because the reality is, if I can help you buy one rental in 20 years, I can show you how to turn that into millions of dollars. Now, if you want to learn about that, click the link below. Let me prove it. Kris, I don't got money for a down payment for real estate. I don't have a 401k, I don't have an IRA, and I don't have an equity in a property, but I still want to be an investor. Well, there is a shortcut to becoming an instant successful investor, but you need at least $3,000. If you can scrape that together or got more and want to become an instant successful investor, click right here and let me show you how to do it right now without waiting.